Two questions. I've charged that you're really betraying our tradition of neutrality, which you did over Shannon, you've done over numerous US military adventures, but that you're doing it again by rightly criticising Russia for what it's doing off our coast with military exercises that are unwanted and should stop, and they should be told we don't want them, and indeed for Russia's often aggressive stance, military escalations and so on, massing troops on the border. But have you any word of criticism whatsoever about NATO? Any? Right? If we're trying to be balanced and objective, have you a single word, has the Irish government got a single word of criticism for the eastward expansion of NATO, of the US putting troops, military advisors and so on into Ukraine? Do you approve of that? Do you think it's a good idea? Does the Irish government think it's a good idea that NATO are doing military exercises while these tensions are ratcheting up in the Mediterranean? Do you think these are good ideas, given how they'll contribute to the escalation? Just give us a straight answer on that. And I suspect you haven't got a word of criticism of NATO, but please prove me wrong. And just on foot of what you just said just before that, and I know we haven't got time for a big debate on it, but I wouldn't be so proud of defending the two-state solution. Many, many Palestinians do not support the two-state solution, and frankly the two-state solution is the equivalent in Palestine of arguing for maintaining partition in Ireland. Because that's what the two-state solution was. It was the partition of Palestine along ethnic and religious lines. And some would argue, Israelis and Palestinians, that that is the main source of the conflict, and that what we actually need is equality and respect for human rights, whether you're Jew, whether you're Arab, whether you're Christian, whether you're Muslim, and a state where everybody has that equality, that would be a far better solution. And many, I would say most Palestinians now subscribe to that view.
Thank you, Deputy Minister.
Look, in relation to NATO and NATO's presence in various countries, I mean, we respect the sovereignty of other countries to decide what they want to do for themselves. So if Lithuania, Latvia, Estonia, nearly all of the countries along the Mediterranean and the European Union and Turkey as well want to be part of NATO, that's a matter for them. We've decided not to be because we have a policy of military neutrality, so we're not part of NATO. NATO hasn't expanded. These countries have decided to join, mainly because they see this massive threat, reasonably see a massive threat to their territorial sovereignty. They've decided to join. Sorry, Ukraine. Sorry, I'm not advocating for Ukraine to join anyone. I'm saying that Ukraine can do whatever their people or government decide to do. But countries that have joined, you've talked about the NATO expansion. I'm talking about countries who've decided to join it, and we must respect their decisions. Lithuania, Latvia, Estonia, all those countries have very, very good reasons to be in military alliances. If that's their wish, we are not in military alliances. But don't confuse military neutrality with taking no sides when there's a clear question of right and wrong. So if you have a country like Ukraine, proud country with a proud history, with tanks on its border from Russia, poised to act, no right-minded person can be neutral. I mean, if you're for democracy and for countries' self-determination of peoples, but not in Ukraine, then you're not for democracy and self-determination. So there's no neutrality there, and there's no impinging whatsoever on a military neutrality. The British are sending weapons, etc. Ireland is not doing that. But we certainly are taking a stand in international bodies. Primarily, it has to be said at the European Council, where the Taoiseach took a very, very strong stand in relation to this. Yes, the issue arises at the United Nations Security Council. Of course, never forget the Security Council. The five great powers have a veto power there as well. So that obviously brings its own complications at the Security Council, which is no fault of Ireland. But there has been a formal meeting on Ukraine, usually once every year in February, that Russia holds when it holds the presidency. And as I understand it, there will be a formal meeting on the 17th of February this year. There have been other side meetings called the ARIA formula as well on Ukraine. And we're in constant discussions, but primarily I would say our diplomatic action would be focused with our European Union colleagues, primarily because Ukraine is on the continent of Europe. And Minister Coveney obviously was discussing this issue, made clear his rejection of what Russia is doing in our exclusive economic zone. The European Council decided with the Taoiseach there in December that any action from Russia would result in massive consequences. But the truth is that the potential for conflict here is having a hugely destabilising effect right around the world, particularly in relation to fuel prices. And the deputies rightly raised the cost of fertiliser. It's a huge issue. But one of the biggest components of fertiliser, or one of the biggest items you need to create fertiliser, is of course natural gas. And the price of natural gas is going up and up and up. And one of the current reasons for that, of course, is the potential for conflict and our dependence on Russian gas. And actually that moves on to another point then, that one of the ways to avoid those type of price increases is what Deputy Ledden advocates for, is to rapidly change to renewable energy. That's the way out of this. But at the moment, this is a real problem. It'll be a problem for the people of Ukraine. Russian families who have dead soldiers if they go. That's the reality as well. But it'll be a problem from a refugee point of view. It'll be a problem from a prices point of view for consumer goods and food in particular. This is a huge crisis, and Ireland will be doing everything it can diplomatically, in accordance with that proud tradition that everybody I think has referenced here of our diplomatic efforts around the world. We're one part of this, but we certainly support the rights of anyone to defend themselves, and they are entitled to do that.
Thank you, Deputy.